our wedding, my husband's childhood friend forcefully tried to pull him into a ceremonial drink, even making a public spectacle of herself with a poorly veiled joke. "If I hadn't been studying overseas for the last 3 years," she'd said with a coy smile, "Leo wouldn't have had a chance to fall for you. It should have been me marrying him." Just as my patience was wearing thin, I heard Leo's voice, low and sharp, beside me. "Get lost. If you're drunk, stop talking nonsense here." The girl's mother, flustered and indignant, stepped forward. "How can you say that to my daughter?" Leo gave her a single, cold glance. "You can get lost, too." On the day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life, Chloe Shaw, the girl who had been fixated on my husband Leo for years, decided to make a dramatic entrance. She arrived wearing a dress that was almost a perfect replica of my own wedding gown, right down to the delicate veil. The style, the cut, the lace-it was all eerily similar. She covered her mouth with her hand in mock surprise. "Oh my goodness, my dress is practically the same as Clara's." "But Leo," she said, twirling in a small circle and batting her eyelashes at him, "who do you think looks prettier, me or her?" Leo's face had already gone pale with a quiet rage, but before he could say a word, I spoke first, my voice steady despite the tremor of anger inside me. "Today's my wedding, Chloe. What exactly is the meaning of you dressing like this?" This seemed to be the reaction she was hoping for. She immediately put on a frightened expression, shrinking back and hiding behind Leo's brother. "Clara is so scary," she whimpered. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything by it. Please don't read too much into it." Her words were apologetic, but her eyes, glinting with triumph, told a different story. This was no accident. She must have found out what dress I would be wearing, and deliberately chosen the same one. The Vance and Shaw families had been friends for generations, so for Chloe to find out my choice of dress would have been trivial. Ever since Leo and I had started dating, Chloe had been a constant source of trouble. While she was supposedly studying abroad, she was fully aware of our relationship. Yet she would send Leo suggestive photos and bombard him with flirtatious messages late at night. Out of respect for the long-standing friendship between our families, Leo tried to handle it discreetly, but after his warnings were ignored, he had no choice but to block her number. In response, she secretly gathered my personal information and started a smear campaign on social media, claiming I had stolen her boyfriend while she was away and encouraging strangers to harass me online. When Leo confronted her with the evidence, she played innocent, insisting it was all just a story she made up out of boredom and calling me oversensitive for taking it seriously. There were countless incidents just like that one, but none of them compared to the time she seriously hurt Leo, an incident that nearly cost him his life. He himself didn't remember the details, but after his mother confided in me, I made it crystal clear to Leo that Chloe was not to be invited to our wedding. I didn't know how she managed to show up, but it was obvious she hadn't grasped that Leo was no longer the boy who would patiently tolerate her behavior. True to form, before I could utter another word, Leo acted. He grabbed her by the collar of her white dress, ignoring her theatrical shrieks, and dragged her toward the main doors of the venue. He shoved her outside, and Chloe Shaw stumbled, landing in an undignified heap on the ground. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and filling with tears. "Leo, please." "Don't call me by my first name," he cut her off, his voice devoid of any warmth. "You have 2 choices. Go home and change your clothes, or get out of here for good." His face was a dark mask, his tone chillingly cold. Chloe was so stunned she forgot to cry. She shot a final, venomous glare in my direction, then scrambled to her feet and hurried away. Leo and I returned to the private lounge. The moment the door closed, he wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. His voice, usually so cool and collected, held a trace of anxiety. "Clara, please don't be angry. I swear I had no idea she was coming. I made sure she wasn't on the guest list." He held me tighter, as if he were afraid I might just disappear. After 12 years together, I knew Leo inside and out. His paranoid, possessive nature meant that once he had committed to me, he never looked back. Of course, I believed him. It was clear he was as blindsided by Chloe's stunt as I was. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he let go of me. "Honey, wait here for a second. I'm going to have someone look into how she got in." He was about to pull out his phone, but I placed my hand over his. "Forget it," I said softly. "Don't waste your time. I think I know who was behind it." The list of people who didn't want me to marry Leo was short enough that, by process of elimination, the answer was obvious. In Leo's presence, they were all smiles and kindness, so he was oblivious to their scheming behind his back. But I knew. They wanted our wedding day to be a disaster, but I was determined not to give them the satisfaction. Even so, I couldn't bear the thought of wearing this dress any longer. Leo and I had spent weeks picking it out together, but now, knowing Chloe had worn the same style, it felt tainted. I reached up to undo the clasps at the back. Leo's voice was laced with panic. "Darling, the ceremony is about to start. What are you doing?" "Help me find a new dress," I said, my voice firm. "I don't want to wear this one anymore." Hearing that I wasn't calling off the wedding, the tension visibly drained from his body. A smile touched his lips. "Okay, my love," he said, then immediately made a call to have the backup dress brought over. It arrived quickly, and after a few more moments of quiet reassurance, it was time for the ceremony to begin. As I walked down the aisle, I saw the looks of astonishment and admiration on everyone's faces. I already knew what Leo's expression would be, and I was right. This second dress was a vibrant, fiery red, a stark contrast to the traditional white one. If the first dress was beautiful, this one was breathtaking. It had originally been designated the backup only because Leo thought the bold color and slightly more revealing cut were too flamboyant for the main ceremony. But after the incident with Chloe, it felt like the perfect choice. My eyes scanned the crowd and landed on the guests' seating area. Chloe was there, having changed into a different outfit, and she was staring at me with a look of pure, unadulterated jealousy. If looks could kill, I would have been buried 10 times over. I feigned ignorance and focused on the officiant, proceeding with the ceremony and exchanging my vows with Leo. With my formidable husband by my side, no one dared to cause any further disturbances during the main event. However, the trouble started again during the toasts. As was tradition, Leo and I made our rounds, toasting the elders and family members. When we arrived at Chloe's table, a middle-aged woman, her mother, spoke up. "I never imagined Leo would get married so soon," she began with a nostalgic smile. "It feels like just yesterday he and Chloe were children, playing house and chasing each other in the yard. Back then, Leo would always be the father and Chloe the mother. They even promised to give me a wonderful grandson one day." She finished with a loud, hearty laugh. I couldn't help but frown. To bring that up at our wedding was a clear provocation. Just as I was about to respond, Leo spoke first, his tone polite but firm. "I don't recall ever saying that, Mrs. Shaw. Besides, we were just kids playing a game. There were 7 or 8 of us, and we drew lots to decide our roles. Chloe played husband and wife with every boy in the group at some point." His explanation was clear and concise, leaving no room for argument. I smiled sweetly. "In that case, you must have quite a few potential grandsons to look forward to. You truly are blessed, Mrs. Shaw." As my mother-in-law had told me, Mrs. Shaw had always wanted Leo as a son-in-law and had tried to drive a wedge between us before. It was obvious she was the mastermind behind Chloe's appearance today. Hearing my comment, Mrs. Shaw's face went pale. "How can you speak like that, child?" "What did I say?" I feigned innocence. Her attempt to land a punch had completely missed, leaving her speechless. Chloe, her face a mask of resentment, shot me a glare before composing herself. "Clara, my mom just speaks her mind. Please don't take it to heart," she said, then turned to her mother. "Mom, that was all in the past. Let's not bring it up and upset Clara." "What's there to be upset about?" Mrs. Shaw retorted, her voice rising. "Our family and the Vance family are respected households. A bride marrying into this family should be magnanimous, to avoid being a laughingstock." "So you're saying I'm not being generous?" I asked with a cold laugh. Seeing the situation escalating, others at the table tried to smooth things over. My mother-in-law gently took my hand, a silent signal not to let them get to me. Normally, I would have fought back, but this was my wedding day. It wasn't worth ruining our happiness over them. I said nothing more and simply poured her a glass of wine, hoping to get the toast over with. But just as I finished pouring, Mrs. Shaw handed the glass to Chloe. Then she poured a fresh glass for Leo. "Leo," she said with a bright smile, "no matter what, you and Chloe are childhood sweethearts. On such a happy day, why not share a ceremonial drink to liven things up?" She then turned to me, her smile unwavering. "Clara, it's a day for celebration. Don't be upset. It was always my dream to have Leo as my son. Now that you're part of the family, just let them share one drink. Consider it fulfilling an old woman's wish." Chloe chimed in playfully. That's right, Clara. If I hadn't gone abroad giving you an opening, it would probably be me marrying Leo today. The audacity was so astounding I almost laughed. My patience had finally run out. I was about to let loose when Leo moved first. He shoved the offered glass away with a sharp movement. Get out, he said, his voice dangerously low. If you're drunk, stop spouting nonsense. The entire table fell silent. Everyone could see that Leo was genuinely furious. The guests at nearby tables turned to stare. Humiliated, Mrs. Shaw's face darkened. Leo, Chloe is still your friend. How could you speak to her like that? He gave her a withering look. You get out too. Mrs. Shaw and her daughter were stunned, their faces turning crimson with rage. Seeing them so flustered was immensely satisfying, but since my husband had already done the scolding, it was my turn to play the part of the reasonable one. Adopting Chloe's earlier sweet tone, I said, Chloe, Mrs. Shaw, please don't be upset. My husband is just very direct. But Mrs. Shaw, I think you must have had too much to drink. I let my voice drop slightly. Who in their right mind asks the groom to share a ceremonial wedding cup with another woman at his own wedding? If you think that's what being generous is, perhaps I should find another woman to come share a cup with Mr. Shaw. Years ago, while Mrs. Shaw was recovering from childbirth, her husband had an affair. The other woman hadn't known he was married and ended things immediately upon finding out, but Mrs. Shaw couldn't let it go. She publicly humiliated the woman multiple times, and the whole scandal became town gossip. My mentioning it now, however subtly, brought the memory flooding back to everyone present. The looks they gave Mrs. Shaw shifted. You little brat, she hissed, glaring at me. I feigned fear and hid behind Leo. Auntie, why are you so angry? Your family is so well respected. Getting this upset will only make people say you lack magnanimity. I threw her own words back at her, and I could see people struggling to hold back their laughter. Chloe, seeing her mother being cornered, finally snapped. Clara Vance, are you doing this on purpose? I raised an eyebrow. Oh, not calling me by my new name anymore? Did I hit a nerve? How funny. Leo is a very straightforward man. He can't stand two-faced games. I think us being together had very little to do with you being abroad. My flawless imitation of her own passive-aggressive style left both mother and daughter speechless and seething. My mother-in-law, who had been watching the drama unfold with a certain amount of amusement, decided it was time to intervene. She stood up and smiled at Mrs. Shaw. Old friend, don't be angry. These kids today, they just say whatever comes to mind. Don't mind them. She then turned to my father-in-law. Honey, the ceremony is mostly over. Why don't you see them out? It's getting chilly, and look, Chloe is shivering. Indeed, Chloe was trembling with rage. My father-in-law at the next table nodded and set down his glass, but Mrs. Shaw angrily snapped, No need! We can see ourselves out. You all just spoil her. One day you'll see what kind of trouble you've invited into your family. With a final hateful glare at me, she turned and left, dragging Chloe with her. As they departed, Chloe looked back one last time, her eyes filled with helpless resentment. After they were gone, someone finally broke the tension with a laugh, and another guest gave me a subtle thumbs up. It seemed Mrs. Shaw's behavior was well known, and many had been tolerating it for years. My husband and I standing up to her had provided a vicarious thrill for everyone. The incident seemed to lift everyone's spirits, and the reception became even more lively. Later that night, after Leo had been plied with drinks by his friends, we stumbled back to our bridal suite. The next part of the wedding tradition was counting the gift money. I sat cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by a sea of red envelopes, and rubbed my hands together with glee. A notebook lay beside me, where the amounts from each guest were meticulously recorded. It was then that I noticed neither Mrs. Shaw nor Chloe had given an envelope. I shrugged it off. I decided to consider them the free entertainment for the evening. Leo lay on his side, his head propped on his arm, watching me with hazy, dark eyes that sparkled in the lamplight. The alcohol had softened his usual intensity, making him seem gentle and approachable. Wouldn't a money counter be faster? He asked with a lazy smile. Counting by hand is so tiring. A machine just gives you a number, I replied without looking up from my task. Counting it like this lets you feel that it's real. That makes some sense, he murmured, continuing to watch me. After counting everything twice and confirming the total matched the notebook, I gathered all the cash, feeling quite satisfied. Then, I turned to Leo and declared, "This is all mine." "You little money grubber," he whispered, a smile playing on his lips. "It's all yours, but you forgot one." Did I? I looked around, confused. I had been so careful. He took my hand, his smile growing wider, full of affection. "I'm yours too." I couldn't help but smile back. In the days that followed, I settled into married life with ease. My in-laws had treated me like their own daughter even before the wedding, and their open-mindedness was the reason Mrs. Shaw's attempts to poison them against me had always failed. Since our house was a long commute from my office, I quit my job with the plan of opening my own design studio. My in-laws were incredibly supportive, even giving me the keys to a property they owned in the city's commercial district, which was conveniently located near Leo's company. Somehow, Mrs. Shaw found out about this. One weekend, she showed up at our house with Chloe in tow. I had slept in and was woken by the sound of voices in the living room. Thinking we had company, I got up, showered, and changed, as I had plans to meet Leo's friends later. When I opened our bedroom door, I found Chloe standing right outside, seemingly waiting for something. "What are you doing here?" I asked, startled. She jumped, clearly not expecting me to appear so suddenly. She quickly composed herself and said, "A clear conscience fears no one." I was baffled. "Are you trying to be funny? This is my house. What could I possibly have to be afraid of?" I didn't have the energy to argue with her and started to walk away, but then I noticed her gaze shift past me, her eyes darting around our bedroom as if searching for something. I instinctively slammed the door shut. I knew what she was looking for. "Your precious Leo isn't here," I said coldly. She looked embarrassed, having been caught, and turned to leave with a huff. I went downstairs to find Mrs. Shaw chatting amicably with my mother-in-law on the sofa. Chloe sat beside her, glaring at me. The relationship between my mother-in-law and Mrs. Shaw was strained, but they maintained a facade of friendship for the sake of their family's long history. Despite my dislike for them, I couldn't just throw them out, so I greeted them politely. Mrs. Shaw's face tightened for a second before she forced a smile. "Clara, you're finally awake." Before I could reply, she turned to my mother-in-law. "It's normal for newlyweds to sleep in, of course, as long as it doesn't become a habit. Sleeping until noon every day, she'll be harder to manage than a queen." The implication was clear. Before I could retort, my mother-in-law's expression changed. She playfully scolded her. "Old friend, what are you trying to say? Are you taking a jab at me?" I had to stifle a laugh. Once, before we were married, I'd stayed over and woken up late, feeling terribly embarrassed. But my mother-in-law had just waved it off, launching into vivid stories of her own rebellious youth, sleeping in and refusing to cook while her own mother-in-law made sarcastic remarks. Her optimism was infectious. Clearly Mrs. Shaw remembered this as well, because she stammered an awkward explanation that she hadn't meant anything by it. Just then, Leo called to say the renovations on my studio were almost done and he would be back soon to pick me up for our get-together. I excused myself to grab a jacket from our room. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard Mrs. Shaw's voice, no longer friendly but sharp with accusation. "I heard Clara quit her job and you just gave her that apartment in the commercial district to start a business." My mother-in-law's voice was calm. "Yes, what about it?" "Honestly," Mrs. Shaw said with a sigh, "these young people are so impatient. This whole entrepreneurship thing is probably just an excuse to see how much she can get from you. First, she asks for a house, and you just give it to her. What happens when she asks for money? $1 million? $10 million? What will you do then?" At this, my mother-in-law's tone became stern. "Old friend, you will take those words back. Don't you ever say something like that in my house again. Clara is not that kind of person. She is diligent and hardworking, and this studio was a carefully considered plan. It is our pleasure to help her. She married into our family, which makes her our daughter. She left her home to be with our son. The least we can do is trust her, not harbor baseless suspicions. We have both been daughters-in-law. We know how the old generation's suspicions caused so much strife. We will not repeat those mistakes." Mrs. Shaw pursed her lips, muttering, "You spoil your daughter-in-law too much." "She's my daughter-in-law," my mother-in-law replied, her voice full of pride. "If I don't spoil her, who will?" Hearing this, my heart swelled with warmth. It was because of her unwavering support that I rarely felt homesick despite having moved so far from my own family. I pushed the door open and walked in, pretending I hadn't heard anything. Seeing Mrs. Shaw's sour expression, I simply smiled, greeted them again, and went upstairs. As I reached my bedroom, I nearly collided with Chloe, who was rushing away from the direction of my room in a fluster. "What were you doing?" I asked, frowning. "I was looking for the bathroom," she stammered, looking even more agitated. "The guest bathroom is downstairs." "Oh, I didn't know," she said quickly, hurrying down the stairs. I watched her go, a sense of unease creeping over me. I opened my bedroom door and stepped inside. The room looked untouched, but I could smell the faint, distinct scent of Chloe's perfume. She had definitely been in here. What was she looking for? My phone rang again. It was Leo. He was downstairs. Pushing my suspicions aside for the moment, I grabbed my coat and left. I had met all of Leo's friends before. They were a tight-knit group who had grown up together, and I liked them all with the obvious exception of Chloe. Leo had made it clear he hadn't invited her to the gathering, but she showed up anyway, walking into the private room we'd booked at a restaurant. Leo's expression darkened as he looked at Daniel, the friend who had organized the dinner. Daniel just shrugged helplessly. "She found out and insisted on coming. I couldn't really say no." Chloe greeted a few people enthusiastically before making her way toward our end of the table. She gave Leo a quick glance before turning to hug Daniel. He quickly stepped back, holding up his hands. "Whoa, no can do. You're wearing so much perfume my wife will smell it on me a mile away." Chloe pouted, her eyes looking hurt. "We've been friends since we were kids. What's wrong with a hug? You can't just abandon your old friends after you get married," she said, casting a pointed look at Leo and me. Leo didn't miss a beat. "In that case, I hope when you get married, your husband can hug any woman he wants." Chloe's face fell. "Leo, how could you say that about me?" "Isn't that what you meant?" She was getting annoyed. "Fine," Daniel cut in, playing peacemaker. "Let's just all sit down and eat." Chloe found a seat, glaring at me as if I were the one who had insulted her. During the meal, perhaps because she knew Leo would defend me, Chloe was relatively well behaved. But after a few drinks, when the room was buzzing with conversation and Leo had stepped out to use the restroom, she made her move. She walked over to me, holding a glass of wine. I was busy eating the shrimp Leo had peeled for me when her shadow fell over my plate. I looked up. "What do you want?" I asked, not bothering to hide my irritation. She seemed taken aback by my bluntness. "Clara, why are you so hostile towards me?" "You can tell I'm hostile, yet you're still here," I said, wiping my mouth with a napkin. Chloe laughed. "You don't like me because I like Leo and we have a good relationship, don't you? I guess I can understand. You must feel very insecure." The smile on her face was smug. I let out a cold laugh. "I don't know where you get these delusions. It was your precious Leo who pursued me. Between the two of us, he's the one who's insecure, not me. And let me correct you on something. It's not your actions I have a problem with, it's you. It means that no matter what you do, I won't like you. Even now, with you standing here, I suspect you're trying to harm me in some way." As I spoke, I glanced at the wine glass in her hand. Instead of getting angry, Chloe's smile widened. "You probably don't know this, but these are all my childhood friends. Even if Leo is bewitched by you, everyone else sees things clearly. I believe he'll eventually realize what you truly are." As she spoke, her gaze flickered to something behind me. In an instant, her expression changed to one of fear. "Clara, I'm not trying to steal him from you. Please don't be like this." She grabbed my hand, and with her other hand, she flung the contents of her wine glass onto her own face. I glanced over my shoulder and saw Leo and Daniel walking back toward the table. It was such a cliché, melodramatic trick. Since she was so determined to put on a show, I decided to play along. Without a moment's hesitation, I turned back and slapped her across the face. The sound was sharp and clean. "Ah!" she shrieked, covering her cheek and staring at me in disbelief. She had probably expected me to frantically explain that I hadn't spilled the wine. She never imagined I would actually hit her. But I had to. If you want to teach someone a lesson, you have to be willing to commit. "What happened?" Leo and Daniel rushed over. The lively room fell silent as all eyes turned to us. Before I could speak, Chloe burst into tears. "I don't know why Clara is treating me like this. I just wanted to apologize for what happened at the wedding, but she was still so angry. The moment I offered her the wine, she threw it on me and even hit me." Her acting was impeccable, her eyes burning with resentment. "How are you?" Leo asked, his voice calm. I'm fine, Leo, but she... Before she could finish, Leo was by my side, taking my hand in his. His eyes were filled with concern. Your hand is red, he said softly, gently rubbing my palm. Chloe froze, tears still on her cheeks. Leo, she's the one who hit me! Her voice was tinged with hysteria. Shut your mouth, Leo said, his dark eyes fixed on her. He was truly angry now. Chloe was so frightened she stopped crying. Clara has never hit anyone in her life, he stated coldly. The implication was clear. If I had resorted to violence, it was entirely her fault. He had always trusted me completely, and it was a comforting feeling. Daniel also chimed in. Chloe, we all know you've never gotten over Leo, but he's married now. There's no need to keep playing these games. Daniel, even you don't believe me? Chloe was stunned. It's not that we don't believe you, another friend added. It's just that this trick is a little... outdated. You're all taking her side, Chloe finally broke down. Fine, I'll call the police. I'll get justice for myself. A few of the friends tried to placate her. Come on, we're all friends here, let's just drop it. Her confidence growing, she pointed a shaking finger at me. Make her apologize or I'm calling the police. I just smiled faintly. Go ahead, I said slowly. And make sure you take the wine glass with you, have them check it for my fingerprints. When she had grabbed my hand to splash the wine, I had never once touched the glass. The color drained from Chloe's face as she realized her mistake. I continued, my voice low and icy. You grabbed my hand and threw wine on your own face. I was so scared I tried to pull away, and you bumped your face into my hand. It was an accident. At worst, it's an accidental injury. Compared to almost killing someone, how much trouble do you think this will get me into? I stared at her, and she turned completely pale. Upon hearing my last words, she was in a full-blown panic. After a moment of stunned silence, she shot me one last venomous look and stormed out of the room. Leo frowned, looking down at me. What did you mean by almost killed someone? Who did she almost kill? I froze for a second, then smiled and wrapped my arms around his. Oh, nothing. I was just bluffing to scare her. It must have worked. He seemed to accept the explanation, and I breathed a sigh of relief as Daniel pulled him back into conversation. After the party, Leo and I went home. The moment we walked through the door, he pulled me close, but a sudden, chilling thought struck me, and I pushed him away. Wait a minute. What's wrong? He asked, his dark eyes clouded with confusion. Be quiet, I whispered, patting his head. I turned off the lights and scanned the room with my phone's camera, and there it was. A tiny red light, blinking from inside the air conditioning vent. A camera. As Leo carefully removed the device, his expression was colder than I had ever seen it. Chloe was in our room today, I explained, a wave of fear washing over me. Thankfully, I realized something was wrong. Who knows what would have happened otherwise? Leo's patience had finally snapped. I'm going to find her. I quickly stopped him. I knew he was angry, but rage clouds judgment. We don't have any evidence it was her, I said, trying to calm him. Even if we did, rushing over there in a rage would just cause a scene and nothing would come of it. She's already spread rumors about me. This time, I don't want to let her get away with it. I know what to do, he said, his voice dangerously calm, and walked out the door. Worried he was still being irrational, I followed him. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard Mrs. Shaw's furious voice from downstairs. Our families have been friends for generations. You practically raised Chloe. I know the wedding was my fault and I apologized. Why do you have to be so aggressive? My mother-in-law, clearly confused, was trying to calm her down. Please, just tell me what happened. Don't ask me. Ask your son and your wonderful daughter-in-law what they've done. I came down the stairs just as Mrs. Shaw was tearfully recounting Chloe's version of the restaurant incident, claiming I had attacked her daughter for no reason. That can't be right, my mother-in-law replied instantly. I know Clara. She wouldn't do something like that without a very good reason. This only made Mrs. Shaw angrier. So, you're saying my daughter is a liar? That she hit herself? Seeing my mother-in-law at a loss, I stepped forward. So what if I hit her? Did you bother to ask your daughter why? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She knows perfectly well why. Otherwise, why would she run home crying instead of hitting me back? You? Mrs. Shaw's eyes turned red with fury and she lunged at me. My mother-in-law quickly stepped between us, shouting for me to go back upstairs. Mrs. Shaw had a volatile temper, and I had no doubt she was capable of hitting me. But I wasn't afraid. "It's fine, Mom," I said calmly. "Let her hit me. This is a lawful society. If she lays one finger on me, I'll get a medical report. I could probably afford a new apartment with the settlement, and she'd get a free pair of silver bracelets and a 7-day stay at the local precinct." My words only enraged her further. "You wicked, vicious woman! How could a person like you be a daughter-in-law? Leo should divorce you immediately." I continued to fan the flames. "The monarchy fell a long time ago, Mrs. Shaw, and you're still talking about divorcing me? As for being vicious, how could I possibly compare to you and your daughter? You used social media to ruin my reputation. Your daughter knew my husband was married, yet she still tried to seduce him, wore a wedding dress to my wedding, and tried to ruin our big day. I listed every one of their transgressions, holding nothing back. Oh, and by the way, your daughter also installed a surveillance camera in our bedroom. Who knows what kind of strange habits she has?" "You're talking nonsense." "Don't believe me? Call her. Let's confront her face to face." "Fine," Mrs. Shaw fumed, pulling out her phone. "I'll call Chloe right now. If you're lying, I'll have you arrested." But before she could dial, her phone rang. It was Chloe. "Mrs. Shaw answered, and before she could speak, Chloe's frantic, tearful voice came through the speaker. "Mom, come back! The police are here! There are so many of them!" It turned out the police had been called by Leo. While I was trying to calm him down, he had already been at work. He had somehow found evidence of Chloe purchasing the hidden camera and records of its installation. The proof was undeniable. By the time I understood what had happened, I was at the police station with Leo, giving my statement. Chloe was charged with invasion of privacy. Because no substantial harm was done, she was sentenced to 7 days in detention. Mrs. Shaw caused a scene at the station, screaming and threatening, but no one paid her any mind. Eventually, she called my mother-in-law, begging her to persuade us to drop the charges. But to my surprise, my mother-in-law's voice was firm. "Chloe may have grown up with us, but my son and my daughter-in-law are the ones I truly care about. She hurt them, and she deserves to face the consequences. You should reflect on your role as a mother and how she turned out. It's not a bad thing for a child to learn that actions have consequences." With that, she hung up and blocked Mrs. Shaw's number. After her week in detention, Chloe was visibly thinner and subdued. By then, I was consumed with getting my studio up and running. Thanks to Leo's constant supervision, the renovations were completed ahead of schedule. I recruited several of my talented former colleagues, and for security, we installed cameras throughout the studio. We had one left over, which I casually placed in a hidden corner of the first-floor stairwell. I thought of it as a simple precaution, never imagining it would prove so useful. A few days later, on my mother-in-law's birthday, as Leo and I were at a bakery picking up her cake, I got a frantic call from a colleague. "Clara, the studio has been vandalized." We rushed over. The moment the elevator doors opened, we were hit with the pungent smell of paint. The entrance to our studio was covered in splattered red paint, with crude, blood-like words scrawled across it. Inside, the place was destroyed. Computers were smashed, the new carpet was soaked, and the walls were stained with some dark, foul-smelling substance. My colleague explained that she had stepped out for a quick lunch, and when she returned, it was like this. The power to our unit had been cut, so our own cameras were useless. "Has anyone suspicious been around?" I asked. She thought for a moment. "Actually, yes. An older woman came by several times today. She said her daughter was looking for a job and wanted to check out the office. She kept asking about our profits. We thought she was a spy from a rival company, so we didn't tell her much." Her description of the woman matched Mrs. Shaw perfectly. Just as I was wondering how we could prove it, Leo spoke up. "The building's cameras are on a separate power supply. She would have had to take the stairs. Didn't you put a camera in the stairwell?" He was right. I pulled up the footage on my laptop. It didn't take long to find her, a middle-aged woman in a mask, carrying a bucket of paint. It was Mrs. Shaw. The camera had captured everything, including her hiding the tools in a first-floor utility closet after she was done. We found the paint and gloves right where she'd left them. I didn't hesitate to call the police. Faced with the evidence, Mrs. Shaw confessed. Her actions had caused over 1 million yuan in damages. When it came time for restitution, we discovered she was not only broke but also hundreds of thousands in debt. It turned out Chloe had developed some expensive habits while abroad. squandering her family's savings and racking up massive debts. Mrs. Prozand, Shaw's plan had been to marry Chloe off to Leo so our family would pay them off. When that failed, and after the camera incident, she became consumed with jealousy and decided to ruin my new business. Unable to pay the damages, her family's property was auctioned off, and for the intentional destruction of property, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Leaving the courthouse, Leo was unusually silent. Thinking he was upset by the verdict, I reached out and touched his shoulder. "Don't be sad." He paused, tilting his head to look at me, his eyes sparkling. "I'm not sad." "Then what are you thinking about?" "I was just wondering," he said seriously, "why did they pick me to pay off their debt? There are plenty of rich people out there. Why me specifically?" I was taken aback by his strange focus. "Maybe because you're handsome," I replied casually. He actually considered this for a moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. "That does seem to be the case. Otherwise, how could I have married you?" I was speechless. As I turned to walk away, he caught up, calling my name. Suddenly, a scream tore through the air. From the corner of my eye, I saw a car accelerating directly toward us. I turned my head and saw Chloe behind the wheel, her face twisted in a mask of rage, her eyes bloodshot. "Go to hell," I saw her mouth the words. Before I could react, a pair of strong arms wrapped around me, shoving me violently to the side. We tumbled to the ground as the car sped past, missing us by inches. Seeing that we were alive, Chloe's eyes burned with an even greater fury. She swung the car around, preparing to charge at us again. I was about to pull Leo to safety when I realized he was frozen, standing in a daze. "Leo!" I screamed. He seemed to snap out of his trance, grabbing me and pulling me behind the safety of a nearby law office pillar. As Chloe, blinded by rage, aimed the car at us again, Leo did something unthinkable. He pushed off the pillar, leaped toward the moving vehicle, yanked open the driver's side door, and pulled Chloe from her seat. Then, under her stunned gaze, he delivered a sharp, brutal slap across her face. I froze, my feet rooted to the spot. Leo had never hit a woman before. "The first time," he said, his voice dangerously cold, his words ground out through gritted teeth. His handprint was already visible on her swelling cheek. "And the second time," he slapped her again on the other side of her face. "Last time you almost killed me, and now you dare to lay a hand on Clara." Chloe was panicking. "Leo, Before she could finish, he raised his hand again. I rushed forward and wrapped my arms around him, afraid he would lose control completely. The police arrived moments later, taking a hysterical Chloe into custody. At the station, they told us that given her clear intent to kill, she was facing at least 10 years in prison. Her life was ruined, and I felt a quiet sense of peace. She deserved it. Leaving the police station, I was about to ask Leo if he remembered what had happened all those years ago when he suddenly pulled me into a tight hug. "Clara," he whispered, his voice trembling violently. "I'm so scared." I could feel his heart hammering against his chest. I had never heard him sound so vulnerable. Only after he had calmed down did he tell me the whole story. 13 years ago, distraught over her parents' divorce, Chloe had grabbed the steering wheel of the car they were in, causing a massive accident. Leo, who was in the car with her, suffered a serious head injury. He lost most of his memories, and his entire personality changed. The most unbelievable part was that before the accident, he'd had a secret crush on me. He remembered it all, now even a silly incident from our childhood where I had snatched his lollipop. Stop talking," I said, trying to cover his mouth, but he caught my hand. His eyes were misty. "Clara, I'm so scared," he repeated, his voice shaking. "What if I had died back then? I'm not afraid of forgetting you. I'm afraid of one day remembering, only to realize I'd missed my chance, that you were no longer by my side. What would I have done then?" "It's okay," I whispered, patting his shoulder and pulling him closer. "I'm right here. I'm with you." After all the twists and turns, he had still found his way back to me. "Besides," I added, a small smile forming on my lips, "it was you who pursued me, remember? It means we were always meant to be together." I looked at him, my own eyes stinging with unshed tears. Fate is a strange and marvelous thing, and for the first time, I was truly grateful for its mysterious ways.
You all know it. You all love it. Bye, babe. That is a girthy tree. Yeah. My hair cream sack, naturally. This is a stream. This is from a photo that I took in the Catskills years ago. If you want to learn a second language, I started with Duolingo for Spanish, actually. I should keep going. Yeah. Mel, I think that would be good. Is that a baobab toothbrush, though? Jumbles? Not girthy enough, but close. She ended. Hi to Roy. Oh, yeah. Thank God. Are they poisonous? Maybe. A chalkboard. No. No, it's the green out the window. Come on. And today, what I'm painting is a Joshua tree. A big, beautiful Joshua tree. Marcian? 1400 plus day streak. What are you learning? Started with Spanish too. Ah! Switched to Japanese. Oh my God! Over a year, Mel. Hell yeah. My window. You lived in upstate New York. It's so beautiful. 25. It's gorgeous. Yeah, I loved. I have not spent a ton of time there. I went to Poughkeepsie for a little and then did like this one trip to go visit folks in the Catskills. I think that's it. I think that's the only times I've been. But yeah, it's freaking gorgeous. Okay. Window. Oh no. Don't say that about my window. Upstate nature is amazing. Trup. Really good bakery out there, I've heard. Is that right?